The question about what morality is a question that's been debated for as long as debate has been recorded. So what is morality? Where does it come from, and who decides what the rules are? These are important questions because the way that morality is perceived can, and often does, play a deciding role in many facets of society and culture. If, it is argued, morality is objective and absolute, often by a decree of a divine being, the rules are immutable for all and for always. Thus, justice and proper conduct can be determined apart from the will and emotional influence of fallible humans. It is often argued by those holding this belief that if morality were not objective and absolute, but rather able to be decided on an individual basis, on the basis of one's opinions, then there cannot be anything that is right and wrong, just and unjust. One could not say that rape, murder, theft, or any other crime that involves a victim is actually wrong, as it is only wrong in the relative and subjective opinions of some. And so the justice system, crime and punishment, falls apart. On the other side is moral relativism. In this case, morality is relative and subjective. It is seen as a tool of survival. Morality is determined and defined on the basis of what is deemed advantageous to the survival of a societal species. Our strength comes in our numbers, cooperation, and shared knowledge. If we kill our own, we weaken ourselves and the society we depend on. If we threaten the ability of another member to survive by stealing their goods, we are a threat not only to the individual, but also to the whole. Society will cast us out or hold us at arm's length, which will hamper our ability to survive. This principle applies to all actions that affect another or the whole. If we are helpful and cooperative, we are an advantage to ourselves and our society. But if we are malicious and destructive, the opposite is true. In this view, morality is not an intrinsic part of nature. There is no natural law of morality, no force, no moral field populated by moral particles such as morinos, electrons, and morons. There is nothing we can point to and say, here it is. Here is the source of morality, and what it tells us is true. Instead, morality is subjective, a useful fiction, a rule of thumb. It can be, and often is, altered and amended to fit the situation at hand, and therefore is also relative. There is an old rebuttal to the assertion that absolute objective morality is handed to us by a being, and this is the question of what makes this being or source moral. Are they moral by an external standard of right and wrong that they are measured against, or are they moral just because they say they are? If the former is true, the morality really has nothing at all to do with this being, but instead the standard against which it is compared. One would ask what this standard is and where did it come from. Any answer we might give is subject to the same questions, and we find ourselves in an infinite regress. Without something to ultimately point to as the source, we cannot say whether the being is actually moral or not. If we follow this view along this line, ultimately it is an argument that says nothing and makes assertions about things it cannot verify. It would be based on the acceptance of an unfounded standard, and therefore held on opinions and belief. If, however, the being is moral simply because it says it is, then the existence of morality is contingent upon the existence of the being and his thoughts and opinions. Since the being is a subject and morality is a product of its opinions, beliefs, or convictions, morality is subjective. Since morality doesn't exist independently, it is also relative. Even if it were the case that we could prove the existence of a higher being that held opinions concerning morality like this, there is nothing that says that would make their morality correct by default. There is nothing that would suggest we should follow what they consider moral as opposed to what we find to be most beneficial to the individual and society. No matter how we look at it, whether morality is a social construct or the opinions of a single being, when followed to its logical end, morality is always relative and subjective. And although we can say that no matter what you believe, morality is not objective or absolute, that still doesn't say anything about where it is likely to originate. Throughout history, moral laws have changed to suit the pressures facing the society it serves. Some are short-lived and some are so valuable that they withstand the test of the ages, such as the universal prohibition on killing your own members without cause. Religious morality is no exception. In all known religions, there isn't a single list of moral laws that have not either been added to, deleted from, or redefined, and most usually in an effort to better unify the people identified as being part of that society, or in response to a threat whether real or perceived. It is this pattern and change in law following the formation or change in a society as opposed to predicting such changes that best tells us where it comes from. Morality is a tool constructed by a society to help aid in their survival. The rules aren't always perfect. Sometimes they're heinous. Such is the nature of trial and error performed by imperfect people with finite knowledge. But over time we not only add to what we define as right and wrong, but also seek out and remove or revise things we once thought to be right or wrong that turned out to be injurious to ourselves or others. The rules are a useful fiction, rules of thumb. But that doesn't mean that they are based on nothing or mere opinion. They are based on what we can show to be effective in not only aiding our survival, but helping us to live. Even more than that, helping us to live better.